Hello and welcome to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent. With me, Chris Price. Joining me this week are business owner David Frace from independent retailer TV World in Chatham, Joanne Frace from Harlequin CDIS, and business doctor Peter Searle. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll look at the changes forcing some supermarkets to announce job cuts, while others continue to open stores across the county. We'll also round up some of the week's business news and look at the impact new high street names are having on a Kent town. First, though, we're looking at the news no commuter likes to hear, a hike in the cost of rail fares. This week it was confirmed passengers will fork out an extra 3.6% for their tickets next year. It's based on the latest inflation figures published by the Office for National Statistics. Campaigners are calling on the government to freeze fares or use a different method of calculating the rise. Here's Joe Earle with the numbers.
While the Department for Transport says the government calculates the cost of rail fare increases fairly, it added 97% of every pound of a passenger's fare goes back into the railway. However, some season ticket prices in Kent are already among the highest in the country, particularly on high-speed services where passengers pay a premium. Journeys from Ashford, Rochester, Canterbury and Maidstone could end up costing ticket holders more than £7,000. South Eastern says it understands passengers don't want to see large increases in the cost of travel, but the government regulates annual fare rises to meet the cost of running Britain's railways. The company also says they've invested over £70 million to improve train services and station facilities. But what do rail users in Rochester think?
Trains are very overcrowded anyway. It's not a good service, not for that sort of price.
I work in London, so it's a hefty amount every year. So any rise, you really feel it.
Today I'm very happy with what I paid because I'm travelling all the way to Birmingham for around £50.
The thing that gets me is the fact sometimes you can't get a seat, and I think if you're paying a significant amount of money to go from one place to another, you should at least be able to get a seat without hassle.
Yeah, very happy considering I used to live in Brighton and I used the Southern service a lot, and felt like it was often delayed, and this is so much better.
I do find that it's quite expensive a lot of the times.
Annoyingly, the quality is pretty good. You know, I mean, I don't like the fares, but on the whole, they do a pretty good job, bearing in mind the incredible flow of people going in, all directions.
OK, so Peter, given the rise in inflation, is this an unfair squeeze on people's incomes?
Well, the rise is in line with inflation, so it's similar to other things that are going up. I think where people begin to get a bit annoyed about the level of the increase is because the trains are so overcrowded, and if the value that they were seeing in what they were getting for their money was good, then they wouldn't be so worried. But they don't seem to be getting the state of the trains quite right. I mean, you go on the train from Ebbsfleet first thing in the morning, and it's standing room only. You're jam packed in. It's just like going on the tube. It's a good frequent service, and it's taking a lot of people from they're coming over from the southern area because they can't get trains all the time. But at the end of the day, people expect to get a similar value to what they were getting before.
Absolutely. I mean, the costs. So a high-speed ticket from Ashford to London will cost an extra £248 if the forecasts are accurate, and a non-high-speed service from Rochester to London will go up £167 next year. I mean, that's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is a lot of money, and I do use the train up to London on average probably about 3 times a week, and I have noticed an increase. But with them talking about getting rid of the guards, I was relating it to that. If that was keeping the guard there on the train, keeping me safe, me personally, I'm thinking, do you know what, actually I'm happy to pay the increase, but I don't use it every day. If I was doing, £500 a year as an increase, I'd be thinking that's a lot of money. My wages aren't reflecting that. Whereas 2-3 times a week, I'm thinking, I can swallow that. An extra pound here, an extra pound there. So everything's got to be realistic and relative, hasn't it?
Absolutely. What should the government do about this situation? Is it acceptable for the cost of
I think it's quite a reasonable increase, which sounds too much. I mean, there's increase on top of increases. It doesn't matter whether you've been put on a water meter or your local council tax has gone up. You've had austerity for a number of years, so effectively the council has shrunk by probably 20% of its staff. So where's the reduction in your personal rates or your business rates? So realistically, it's another cost on top of another cost. So I think you've got to be very, very careful. So that sounds quite chunky.
Yeah, absolutely. Should the government then perhaps consider freezing rail fares? I mean, it does freeze fuel duty in the budget. It's done that for the last 7 years. Is that a step that you think the government should be considering?
It could be a step. I mean, the other thing that they could do is link the increase to the customer satisfaction.
Well, that would be a decrease then, wouldn't it?
Well, it would moderate the increase,
Yes.
wouldn't it? So,
But they
that
claim
could
their
be-
customer satisfaction rates are really, really...
I mean,
But I do agree with Peter. Regularly, I have to stand on the train. I want to sit down. I'm tired. My feet have had enough.
But
you know.
realistically, we've had many reports about wages and standard and cost of living, but there's not one, whether it's gas, electricity, water, but obviously people use the train to go to work. Everything has gone up, but it's gone up far more than people's wages have, so it's not balanced. So in this case, a freeze will be very logical because people do get upset, but they're forced. They have to get their train to work to earn their living.
You're captured by that.
They're being pushed.
Rail prices are measured by using the retail price index, which went up by 3.6%. The consumer price index, which is actually used by a lot more for a lot more services, actually went up by 2.6%. So should we be actually using
the consumer
CPI rather than RPI?
It would seem more logical, wouldn't it? It's a bigger basket, so it's a better reflection on everything.
There's always different things that affect it, isn't it? So if gas price suddenly goes up, or let's say the oil price, so fuel price goes up, suddenly that goes up, then the rate of inflation goes up. So there's a lot of things that affect things that are a bit disproportionate. So this is obviously right now, this is an annual increase, isn't it?
Yes.
But whatever's happened in the last 3 or 4 months, now bear in mind that we've had another election, which was it was difficult because obviously that caused a lot of disturbance. So from a retail point of view, for a retailer in Chatham in the High Street, effectively we've noticed probably 4 months of almost very, very low or poor sales. And it's probably the worst we've ever seen it, and it's not us. We have colleagues or businesses, and we work with big companies, and they're right across the country. Just managed in Scotland, Wales, everyone's been affected. So we've had 4 months of very, very poor sales, which has affected everything else. So inflation looks worse than it should be, perhaps. This goes up because obviously it's the annual change, so that affects everything, and that's actually then disproportionate. So there is no counteract if we're just going to go, that's the figure, it's worked out by this, you've got to put up with it. It's unfair.
I want to just get in one very quick question, because I think it is important. I mean, running a train company is not cheap, and South Eastern have invested 70 million in the rail services, although they didn't say over what timescale. But I mean, should we cut them some slack very quickly?
Every business has to be accountable. So if you're earning £1, it's not you've taken £1, it's what you do with that pound that makes you money. So they do make money, okay, but they have a lot of people who have to work for the rail, and there's a lot of people who... But
to interrupt, and to a degree I do think as a frequent user, we should cut them some slack. I've never been held up on the train. No. The trains are frequent. The only thing I would like is a seat at the end of the day. Sure. But I would equally like not to have to pay more to use the service.
It is it's a very, very expensive infrastructure. They need a lot of security,
Absolutely.
A lot of checks, but that
No,
costs money.
Guys, thanks very much for your thoughts on that. Moving on now, we have an update on one of Kent's largest leisure developments and a pledge on congestion from the boss of a housing developer. Here's Louisa Britton with this week's Business Roundup.
The man behind Canterbury's biggest ever housing development says he wants the plan to have zero effect on the city's already congested roads. Corinthian has permission to build 4,000 homes in South Canterbury, and the company's chief executive Simon Wright says there's no reason why it should increase traffic. He said a new slip road on the A2 will help, and claims to have the best consultants in the country working out how to move traffic away from the centre. New drone footage shows the progress being made at new £53 million retail and hotel project in Dover. The St James's development will have a cinema, travel lodge and shops when it opens next year. This video was captured by Alec Esposito of Apex Drone Photography based in Hawkinge earlier this month. Kent is the thirstiest place outside London when it comes to English wine, according to new figures. The county is forming part of a bubble across the southeast, which accounts for 51% of all English sparkling wine sales in the UK by independent seller Naked Wines. The company said drinkers in London and the home counties are 10 times more likely to drink homegrown wine than the rest of the country.
OK, so plans to build 4,000 homes to the south of Canterbury will not have zero effect on the city centre's traffic. What do you think about that?
Totally believable. Yep, totally believable.
Yeah. we're sticking with. You think that he can meet? That
I'd love to believe him. I would love to believe him, but I just don't see how that is a viable statement.
Sure. Another one of the topics there. There are some fantastic images of the St James's development in Dover. £53 million been spent there. They can have a Cineworld, Next shop. All sorts. There's something that town really needed.
It's a fantastic development because it's a mixed development. So it's going to really attract people with the cinema and everything else.
It's just the towns need it, don't they?
Yeah.
They need that injection.
Absolutely.
Yeah, getting rid of that eyesore.
And wine is one of the great success stories for Kent, isn't it? At the moment, just another example. Kent, we lap up our own produce by sounds of it, which is something that we want to be doing.
Keep it in Kent.
We'll say keep it in Kent and let's grow more.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And drink more.
Drink more.
Do you drink some English wine?
Yeah. Oh, you're asking what I don't drink.
I think the lady doth protest too much. Perhaps, I don't know. But well, moving on now. After the break, we ask why some supermarkets are making losses. There's a real big change between how the traditional supermarkets are faring against some of the new players in the market, the discounters like Aldi and Lidl, and also we'll have a look at how some retail therapy is reviving a Kent town, namely Stroud, and we'll take a look at our number of the week. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Chris & Co, the show looking at what affects business in Kent, where I'm joined by business owners David Frace, Joanne Frace and consultant Peter Sell. Now, it appears to have been a tough summer for supermarkets across the county. Asda's confirmed it will make redundancies at 18 of its worst performing stores, including one in Kent. Meanwhile, the Co-op is reviewing the future of some outlets. Discount retailers are not having it their own way either, it seems. Andy Richards has the details.
Asda's admitted there will be redundancies at its store in Broadstairs, where it employs 305 people. 30 staff have been told their jobs at risk as the supermarket tries to bounce back from its worst annual figures since it was bought by US giant Walmart in 1999. Shoppers in Deal may not be able to pop to their local Co-op for much longer. The supermarket said it's not decided whether to renew its lease on Park Street. Discount retailer Wilkinson's confirmed it has started redundancy talks with 3,900 staff. The high street chain reportedly posted an 80% drop in pre-tax profits in its latest results and suggested Brexit played a part in its downturn. But it's not all been bad news. Aldi confirmed it will be opening on Gillingham Business Park next month, creating 30 jobs. It will be the German chain's third store in Medway.
Okay, so David, what are the main challenges facing the supermarkets and retailers at the moment?
I think it's customer loyalty and trying to keep the pound that's out there spent in your store. So going back to the earlier topic you said about it's a £300 increase on a rail fare, it's all more money that's disappearing from your spendable pocket. So, people want to have a bargain, or people want to feel that if they're spending the money on their groceries per week, they're getting the best value. And the German people, Aldi, Lidl, that they are making sense to a lot of people. The trouble is, once people start moving or shifting their loyalty, that has implications. So yes, it makes it tougher. They obviously makes it tougher for the normal people.
How much of these changes is the way that we're shopping now? Presumably people are supposed to be doing more little and often rather than a big shop. And also a lot of supermarkets are saying things like Brexit and the impact that's had is causing them troubles as well. What do you think?
I think Brexit is a poor excuse. I think that's a huge excuse that a lot of people have gotten, just latched onto. No matter what business industry they're in, it is just an excuse. I think we all need to get over it and get on with it. That's my personal view on it. And I don't think it matters where you shop, or you've just got to get on with it.
But I doubt it has put up import prices for...
Well, to a certain extent, a lot of things are pre-agreed, I suggest. So obviously it is a good mask. And certainly we saw it in our field where people increased their prices to us, and already we're almost level to where we were before. So that would suggest that it was a good mask to actually try and make people pay more money, so it didn't matter what you're buying. And obviously a lot of costs have gone up. We know costs will go up, but some costs perhaps didn't need to go up. So Brexit is a good conversation to muddy the field.
It's more than just costs though with the supermarkets, it's the message that they actually send. And the Germans are sending a very, very clear message about value.
But do we not need to go back to Peter's statement about wine? You know, grow your own, buy in Kent. Why are we not growing our local produce and selling it within the supermarkets within a 30-mile radius and only eating what's in season?
Which
you know, let's go backwards, but in a very positive way.
Sure. Very difficult
we're
to keep
offered
up
too
your
much,
volumes
aren't we? We're
at
offered too
those.
much choice. In a supermarket, there's too much on offer, which you don't necessarily need, which then means people eat more.
Incomes are being squeezed, as you said. I mean, inflation is right. Rail fares are on the up because of this. You know, does this just mean that people have less to spend, and in general we're looking at a tough couple of years ahead for not just supermarkets but retail
or just generally there's a lot of uncertainty, so the investment is constrained, I think, going forward for the next couple of years.
Is there any good news on the horizon?
Yeah, I think we as we're getting away from what was the election, everything seems to be coming back to normal, which we certainly see in retail, because it's a very sort of, it's a motive, and it's also it changes very quickly. So you have an election and suddenly we die off, but we've died off for nearly 4 months, we just before and just now, and it started to come back. So I think it's very, very difficult to you have to be careful. So people will always need food. They will always spend. What they won't do now is perhaps go and buy the car that they thought they were going to do, or they won't put the extension on, so they will prioritise slightly differently. At the end of the day, they're still going to have to get their rail fare.
Why have Asda, Morrison's, Sainsbury's and the like not taken Aldi and Lidl head on price?
I think go on.
I mean, the price issue for the bigger supermarkets is that they actually offer a wider selection of goods, and therefore that they expect you to buy those along with the cheaper goods, whereas the discounters are only offering one particular line. So people just think, well, I will buy the cheaper lines in there and buy my more expensive elsewhere.
But not just that, you buy the choice, don't you? That's it. That's your choice. You buy it and you go.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks very much for your thoughts on that. Some poorly informed people might consider Strood a lesser cousin to nearby Rochester, Chatham and Gillingham in the Medway towns. But an army of big-name retailers moving in show the town is holding its own when it comes to shopping. Keelan Webster went to see what's happening.
B&M Bargains is the latest retail giant opening up in Strood as part of the town's resurgence. The European retailer joins a growing list of big brands helping to boost business in Strood. As a result, visitor numbers are also on the rise.
Well, I've been walking around this morning and there are a lot of people here, and the footfall has definitely increased, and that gives a sense of community as well. People meet down here, they'll go and have a cup of coffee and then they'll go and do their shopping, so it adds so much to the buzz that is Strood.
Jane remembers when people thought Strood would lose large numbers of investment after the Civic Centre moved to Gun Wharf. Thankfully that's not proved to be the case, and the turnaround has been remarkable.
I think Strood has done a great deal. If you go back a number of years, people felt that there was deprivation in terms of it looked scruffy, or there were empty shops, there wasn't a choice of shops. Now that's completely turned around, and I'm very grateful for the investment and the confidence both these larger stores and the smaller ones have put in Strood.
And it's those smaller businesses which have helped to pave the way for bigger firms to invest in the town.
The small businesses in Strood are absolutely critical. People that want small services that very rarely you see now in a high street are here in Strood, and people are very grateful for that.
B&M follows coffee giant Starbucks and a brand new M&S food hall in opening up on the retail park. But what do people make of the newly revamped Strood?
To be truthful, I used to think it was a bit of a dump. But now it's, they've done all this car park. I know it must have cost a fortune to do it, but it's beautiful, isn't it? It's lovely to walk about, you're safe walking over the crossing. It's lovely, yeah.
It's obviously good, like people have the dinner break, get in there for the dinner, get Starbucks coffee. Like I'm a caffeine addict, so just drink coffee like 3 or 4 times a day. It's probably that, really. If you look at the car park, you can see like there's loads of people around there, so they're probably going to make a killing off of that.
People from going to different shops, they can just go to M&S, get everything they need, and then be done with it. I think it's a really good idea. Saves you going down to Maidstone or anything like that. I think, because I'm from Australia myself, so it's quite good to pop in, say hello, see what the crack is.
And with retail's biggest names cropping up across the town, it seems like the number of people popping in, saying hello and seeing what the crack is will only continue to increase. Keelan Webster, KMTV.
Okay, so guys, why are M&S, B&M thinking of coming to Strood? Why are they attracted to a town like Strood?
That particular retail park at Strood is got a superb little car park. One of the things that always attracts people for retail is free parking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you see a lot of the other villages and towns around Kent where they introduce parking, it starts to kill the trade off almost immediately. All right, it recovers a little bit after time, but generally speaking, when an area has got good parking, toilets and all that sort of thing, good access, then people will shop there if they're the right shop.
Is it the way it's going to go, the sort of more retail park type of environment, as opposed to people deciding to shop in the high streets? I know that one is very close.
I don't think so. Chatham, we're starting to see a lot more shops now that aren't vacant, more recently actually, which is an encouraging sign. The trouble is, as Peter said, charging for parking really is a nonsense. You can be right on Strood and you've now got free parking, so it's only a few pounds or more than a few pounds, but it's still tiny for what you could spend in Boots.
Yeah.
But it's an emotive thing. People say, I don't want to pay parking. I don't want to stand in the meter. I've only got 10 minutes left on my clock. That puts people off.
So there goes to Strood because it's free.
Also, that area there has been landscaped really well. It's been recently been done up. And how much of it, a Starbucks is there, somewhere to sort of sit and just sort of see, watch the world go by. How much of it is about the environment that you're going to be in when you're going shopping?
There's a lot to be said for the environment. I mean, you look at some of the towns where they've got a really good mix of shops. I think in Westmoreland, for instance, it's got a really good mix of leisure types of shops. There's cook shop, gun shop, all sorts of different things that people go to.
That makes it attractive, doesn't it? It's different.
There's plenty of restaurants, and then there's all the services. You've got plenty of hairdressers,
brilliant.
Everybody, and that mix is brilliant.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks very much for your thoughts on that. Before we go, we just have time to reveal our number of the week, and this week's number of the week is 2.1%. It's the rate at which average weekly earnings have increased since last year. You'll remember from earlier in the programme, in the retail price index put inflation at 3.6%, while the consumer price index said it was 2.6% in July. That shows that wages are not keeping up pace with prices. Are we heading for a cost of living crisis, guys?
I think because people aren't getting paid as much as prices are going up, there's a reason for that. And at the moment we're pretty much near only about 4 or 5% unemployment, and until the unemployment starts to put pressure on this, then wages just aren't going to go up at all.
Sure. Guys, thank you very much for your thoughts today. Very much appreciated to have you on the show. That's it for the latest edition of Chris & Co, our show looking at the issues affecting business in Kent. You can keep up to date with all the county's latest business news at kentbusiness.co.uk. But for now, thanks very much. Goodbye.